Hey y'all. So if you have experience submitting to literary journals, you know how difficult and frustrating that experience can be sometimes to send your work off that you care about and wait for 6 months, sometimes longer, only to have rejection letters come back. And I wish I had some kind of magical formula I could share with you to make it easier. I don't. Sorry. But while you're waiting for your poems and your stories to come back to you with their tails tucked between their legs, as Philip Levine would say, there's another genre that you can write in that is much, much easier to get published in. When you write in this genre, instead of waiting 6 months for a rejection letter, sometimes you have an acceptance in a couple of weeks and a publication a couple of months later. So it can really speed up the process. And again, it's not really replacing writing stories and essays and poems and all of that. It's an additional thing that you can do to build up your publications, and also build relationships with literary journals and editors and that sort of thing. If you haven't guessed what I'm talking about yet, don't worry. I'm going to tell you. I'm not like one of those scammer dudes in your YouTube ads that claims to have some magic secret that's going to solve your life, and then he talks for 10 minutes and he still hasn't told you what the secret is, and then you have to go to his website to see what the secret is, but it's not on his website, and then he wants you to subscribe to some kind of curriculum, and that's actually where the secret is, and by that point you don't care anymore, so you just go back to your normal life. I'm not like that. I'm going to tell you what this is. I just want to make sure that before I tell you, you don't just check out, because it might sound boring at first, but I promise that this is worth your while. It's been worth my while, so I hope that you find this really useful. So what am I talking about here? I'm talking about book reviews, which I know might sound kind of boring, not as cool as your poetry and your stories and stuff, but just keep listening. So I used to think that book reviews were the kind of thing that staff writers at hoity-toity magazines and newspapers did. I didn't realize that lowly emerging writers like myself could write book reviews, but you can. And you can write book reviews for some really nice literary journals and get some cool publications that way. Book reviews are a great way to get published in literary magazines because there's a pretty high demand for book reviews and not as many people submitting them as those that are submitting poems and stories and essays. So there's a high demand and not as many book reviews being written. Even though publishing book reviews is no replacement for publishing poems and stories, it can still be a nice thing to do while you're waiting to hear back from journals on your other submissions. It gives you the chance to get your foot in the door with some really great literary journals, and it gives you the opportunity to work with editors, which I actually found to be really fun, and you get to do some literary citizenship by promoting somebody else's work. I ended up publishing 2 book reviews during my first year as an MFA student, one with Colorado Review and one with Atticus Review. Colorado Review is a really nice journal, and I actually, as payment, they gave me a year subscription to Colorado Review, which is really cool. I've really enjoyed going through those. You know, the thing with literary journals is you're not always going to like every single thing in them, probably, but gosh, Colorado Review has some nice stuff in it. So I've enjoyed that, and I don't know as much about Atticus Review, but they seem like a nice journal, and I want to read more of their stuff. So I'm going to put the links to my book reviews in the description if you want to take a look at those so you can see kind of what I'm talking about here. I'm also going to put a link to an interview that Colorado Review did with Susan Cheever, who is their book review editor. So you can read up on her take on this whole book review thing if you want to. So I want to share how I did this so that you can do it too. The first thing you need to do is you need to get a book. You need to read a book that you want to review. Sounds obvious, I know. You can't review a book if you don't have a book. But you have to select your book carefully because there are certain things that literary journals want in a book review that have to do with the kind of book. Make sure it's a fairly recent book, preferably published within the last year. Also make sure that it's a book that literary journals are going to be interested in. Steer clear of genre writing, romance, sci-fi, horror, fantasy, that kind of thing. Unless the journal you're gonna query is interested in that sort of thing, and if so, by all means, but for the most part, avoid genre writing. Also, I'd probably steer clear of big blockbuster books that are already going to have a lot of press with big places like the New York Times, because with those books, you are going to have some competition, and there is going to be more people writing that stuff, and you want to find books that are going to make your review unique. and easy to place with a journal. Something from an independent press or a university press is usually a really good way to go. Also, pick a book you're pretty sure you're going to like. Literary journals aren't interested in trashing bad books. They're interested in promoting good ones. So make sure it's something that you can give a positive review for. Once you've picked a book, you got to read it, which again, that's kind of obvious, but you have to read it like a book reviewer, which isn't really too different from reading something for an English class or something like that. You're reading it looking for strengths and weaknesses. You're looking for themes, metaphors, characters, story, just all the different elements that make for a good book. Make sure to annotate those in the margins, underline stuff, highlight quotes that you could share as excerpts in your book review. It's always a good idea to have some excerpts from the book in your review so that people reading your review can get a sense for how the book sounds. So you would think that after reading the book, you would just jump into writing your review, but I'd actually recommend holding off on writing your review for just a minute and finding a couple of journals that you'd like to query for your book review first. The reason for this is that all journals are going to have slightly different requirements for their book reviews, and you want to make sure that you can write a book review that's going to meet the needs of the specific journal that you're going to query. So different journals will have different length requirements, slightly different formatting of things. So you want to make sure that you're aware of that stuff before you write your review. So make a list of journals that you want to query. Keep it kind of short. You don't need to send out dozens of submissions for this thing like you would for poetry or something like that. A great place to start for compiling your list for literary journals you want to submit to is to look in the acknowledgement section of the book you read and see if excerpts from the book were published in any literary magazines previously. It's possible with novels and memoirs that sections of it may have been published in literary journals previously, so you can see if that's the case. It's a lot easier if you're reviewing an essay collection or story collection or poetry collection. It's a lot easier if you're reviewing a collection of shorter works, because those often were published in literary magazines before the book was compiled. And you do this because literary magazines usually really like to promote their past contributors. So if someone has published with a journal before, and then that person has a book that comes out, that journal will probably be pretty interested in promoting that book. If the acknowledgements section isn't helpful, you can go to the author's Twitter or Facebook page or website and try to find a list of their publications there, see what literary journals they've published in there, and yeah, add those journals to your list. The next step is to send out a query letter. Some journals want you to submit your reviews, like completed reviews, through Submittable. I recommend not doing this for a couple of reasons. One, you don't want to write a book review until you know which journal you're going to write it for, because each journal has their own requirements, like I said. So focus on journals you can query without having to send them a completed book review. And I don't know if this is really the case, but it just seems like if you submit a book review through Submittable, it's just going to go sit in some slush pile somewhere. And book reviews are kind of time sensitive, so you want a quick turnaround with these. So I would find journals that allow you to query their review editor specifically through email. It just seems like it's the quickest and easiest way to do it. And I'll be honest, it's the only way I've done it. But it's worked for me, so if you want to do what I did, that's really all I'm showing you how to do. If you've done book reviews before and have had a good experience with Submittable, please comment and let me know. I'd be interested to know how that's worked for you. Anyway, let's talk about writing a query letter. It doesn't have to be long, just something brief and professional that says, hey, this is the book I read. I'd like to review it for your journal. Would you be interested? That's really all it has to be. I mean, you could probably put your bio in there too, like you would with any other submission, so they get an idea of who you are. But other than that, I don't think you really need anything more than that. Just keep it simple, keep it very short, keep it professional. You might be tempted to carpet bomb a ton of different journals with your query, but again, don't do that. Keep it to a short list. And I don't really know the best way to do it, but I would recommend sending your query to your top choice and then waiting to hear back. Wait for a week or two. If you don't hear back, send it to the next one. Most likely, they'll get back to you within a week or two. That way you can avoid the awkwardness of two different editors saying, yes, please send us your review, and then you're stuck saying, who do I send it to and who do I turn down? And that's just awkward, and I think it's avoidable. Once you hear back from an editor and they say, yeah, sure, send me what you've got and we'll take a look, read through some of their book reviews on their website and get a good sense for the kind of book reviews that they publish. Get a sense for the length, the tone, how they do excerpts. Do they do block quotes or do they do shorter inline quotes? That sort of thing. Once an editor shows interest in your book review, you want to make sure that you give them something that reflects what they're hoping to see. Okay, so now you can go ahead and write your book review. In addition to a brief introduction to the book and some analysis and talking about some of the themes and all that kind of stuff, also find ways to include yourself on the page. Make sure that your own voice is coming through. Make sure that you're having fun writing it. Make sure that you're being a little creative with it. No one wants to read a boring book review, so if you're bored writing it, then no one's going to want to read it. So have fun with it. Within the constraints of the journal you're writing for, there's room for your own creativity and individuality. One thing that's nice about writing book reviews is that you don't have to spend tons and tons and tons of time writing them. If you're writing a short story or even a poem, it can take so long, months, to get it right. And you don't have to do that with book reviews. Definitely spend enough time to make it your best and make it worth the editor's time. But this isn't something that you have to slave over for months. It's something that you can knock out in a weekend. So yeah, make sure that you're giving the editor your best work, but also don't overthink it. Keep it simple and get it off to the editor as soon as you can. So that's about it for how to do this whole thing. But I want to share a couple other thoughts really quick. First, like I said, I've queried 2 book reviews and published both of them. So I'm pretty confident that you're going to be able to have a lot of success with this process and get some nice publications. But 2 book reviews is still not a lot of experience. So it's quite possible that on my 3rd book review, I'm going to get rejected. I don't know. Maybe I just had some beginner's luck. But I think that you're going to have luck with this. If you don't, though, if you get rejected, keep trying. Don't think that you're bad at this just because I got lucky with it. Even if publishing book reviews is easier than publishing other things, publishing is still hard. It's just kind of how it goes. Also, don't just submit to Colorado Review and Atticus Review because I did. There's plenty of literary journals that are taking book reviews. Of course, you can submit to Colorado Review and Atticus Review, but see what else is out there. See what is going to work best for you and the book that you're reviewing. Finally, please be kind to editors, to the authors whose books you're reviewing. My hope is this video will help you get some publications you can be proud of while also helping another writer promote their work. My fear, though, is that people will watch this and blast editors with a bunch of second-rate reviews. So please be kind, be professional, and work hard at this. Make sure that you give editors your best work. I think that about covers it. Let me know if you have any questions in the comments, and also please post links for your reviews when you get them published. I'd love to take a look, and I'm sure other people watching this video would love to take a look as well. Good luck!